Today, we're going to look at one of the most famous military studies to show why restrictive eating, dieting, leads to obsession and crazy thoughts with food. And I know it seems weird, like I got a Buddha behind me. My whole thing is reconnect to inner peace. Why would I look at the military for about food wisdom? It seems weird, but the military actually wanted to feed their soldiers less. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this famous study, the Ansel Keys study done in World War II. We're going to show you some crazy things, and then right after that, we're going to go into a powerful psychological concept called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, the famous study, they took 32 Harvard males. The military was interested in seeing how little they could feed these guys, because in World War II, you had these supply lines all across Europe, and food transportation was a big thing. So if you could feed your soldiers less, you might win the war more effectively. So this is a really powerful study that shows something incredible about the relationship between thoughts. These normal guys with food, they had no problems with food before this, but then the study began. And the study simply had these guys lose about 20% of their weight over 6 months. So this was at a time when there was no cooking channel, there was no Instagram, nothing. And the guys cut their diet, their calorie intake, to about 1,500. Guess what happened? They lost weight and they went nuts with food. They went nuts with food. Do you see this is crazy right here. Normal people restricting, going crazy with food. Restriction causes food craziness. These guys, they would start to fantasize about food. They would start to collect recipes and they'd be talking to each other like bros, you know? What's up, man? What you eating later? Like, oh yeah, like the recipes, muffins, and they'd go on and on and on. Like, it was like they were watching the cooking channel back in the 1940s when this study was done, because they were so obsessed with food. The restriction caused them to obsess about food. Many other people began to rebel. They snuck food, they hid food. Other people developed binge eating, where they just uncontrollably wolfed down food. Others distorted their view of exercise. They would force themselves to run to burn off the calories, and it was hurting themselves. Now there's good news. There is very good news. It took these guys about 5 months to return to normal. So they got all out of sync, they got out of whack, and then they returned to normal with food. They stabilized, they went on to live their lives. End of story. Now I'm going to link to that study down below, and I'm also going to link to a quiz option that you can take to see if you have any sort of disordered relationship with food. Those options are down below. But we need to understand the powerful psychological concept, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this hierarchy of needs, you can see it right there, explains why restricting food causes obsession. Because we know, and I know from experience too, when I was wrestling, the day before the tournament, the days leading up to the tournament, when I tried to cut back on weight, all I could think about was food. All I could think about was food. And you might be able to relate as well, but why? Why does restricting food cause you to ruminate on food? As you can see, the bottom of that pyramid right there, food is on the bottom, along with air, along with water, sleep. You need food to live. You need food to live. You need food to live. Your body is probably not getting enough food. This is the fundamental reason why people obsess about food. If you can't stop thinking about food, if you got food thoughts going on in your head, It might sound crazy, but you have a restrictive relationship with food, and restriction means you're being too strict with food. When you're too strict with food, you're not eating enough. If you don't eat about every 5 hours, that bottom level of the pyramid is going to go into red alert. That's what happened with the guys in the study. Some of the guys in the study would eat all their calories in the morning and lunch. Then they wouldn't be able to have anything for the rest of the day. So more than 5 or 6 hours would go by and their belly would start to go on red alert. The belly would start to signal, eat food. At maximum, every 5 or 6 hours, you need to eat. So if you aren't getting enough food every regular intervals, that's the key thing, regular intervals, then the bottom level of the pyramid is going to go on red alert, and it will make you think about food, and it will make you ultimately eat a lot more than you want to. That's why you can't stop thinking about food. And guess what happens? I know one person, after they started learning about this, they said, I was asking them, how do you feel after you overeat? They said, oh, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty, like, ugh. And then I said, what does the guilt make you do? The guilt, what does that guilt voice make you do? The guilt voice says, don't eat again for a long period of time. That's for a lot of people, that guilt voice. Back in the wrestling days, I would wrestle and then I would overeat after the tournament, way too much food, gain like 10 pounds. I'd feel horrible, horrible guilt. And then I would say, I'd have another tournament coming up, I'd have something else coming up, and I would think, I need to eat less. I need to stop eating because I just overate. Let me not eat. Let me restrict. Let me be a good boy and not eat. And that type of thinking is wrong. It's just screwed up thinking. If you're wondering why you can't stop thinking about food, you need to look at that voice in your head, that belief in your head that tells you to compensate by eating less. That eating less voice in your head, it's screwing you over, because that voice is then blocking that bottom level of the pyramid. The bottom level of the pyramid goes on red alert, and when the bottom level of the pyramid goes on red alert, it's gonna make you overeat. That bottom level stands for your brain stem. Your brain stem down there. Your brain stem controls you, controls your breath. You ever notice how you don't have to think to breathe? You just breathe? It's kind of nice. Well, guess what? If that thing goes on red alert, that brain stem is gonna close down the thinking mind, and it's gonna control your body and make you overeat. So that's why you can't stop thinking about food. Like the guys in the study, there is restriction going on. The restriction triggers the brainstem to think about food and ultimately to act on those thoughts. The key to avoid this is to even out your eating at regular periods of the day so the red alert never gets triggered. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, like the channel, and be sure to check out the complimentary article down below where I talk more about this study and this phenomenon. Namaste.